Welcome to the most must-see podcast in pro wrestling history. Welcome to Mark's Side of the Ring. Our reviews, our opinions, our predictions, spoiler-free on all things AEW and WWE. I am your main Mark, Miguel Minetti, and for the first time since WrestleMania 37, I am back with my...
For the first time in forever. Now continue.
Well, we got a little singing duet by our co-host, Nick Fiorentino. We also got Fred DeCourt. What's going on, boys?
What's happening? The band is back together after many, many weeks.
I figured we should do the shot early this week because we might not be friends after this show.
Yeah, it's gonna get heated.
Messages we've been sending back and forth. So
yes, the three-man booth is back, and we're coming in hot because we have a lot to discuss today, guys. And for kind of catch up to speed what Nick just said, we spent a little time before the show going over, which we're going to get to in just a moment, the finale, the final match of Blood and Guts that happened last night. And we're going to jump right on into things talking about Blood and Guts. Let's go right in and just talk about it. So last night was the main event, the match that AEW has been promoting for quite some time. Even our co-host Fred turned on AEW last night because he was intrigued by Blood and Guts.
It's the second time I've watched a complete AEW Dynamite. The first one was the Luke Harper tribute show, which I actually chose against NXT. That spoke volumes on my respect for Luke Harper or John Huber or whatever you want to call him. And this was my second one. I wasn't going to watch the whole show, decided to. I figured out what the hell, nothing else was on anyway. I'd watch the whole Dynamite and get a feel for it. And I got some thoughts.
Well, we're about to hear those thoughts. So we won't talk about the entire show last week, but what we're going to do is we're going to spend a good amount of time here. I want to kind of jump right into it. The main event, which was the Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle. And I think they called it the Blood and Guts match. So, which was definitely like War Games for any of you.
Yeah, they couldn't use
it
that.
was it was War Games.
It was War Games. We won't call it War Games, but it was War Games.
It's a shame, really, when you think about it, that Cody, who isn't the owner of the company, but you could say the president of it, or one of the, whatever they're called. What do they call them? Executive? I don't know, whatever they call their people, but whatever.
Producer or whatever the hell.
And his own father created it, and he can't even use the name, but such is life. Contracts are contracts, and IPs are IPs. So
such is life. So let's jump right on into it, boys. Let's talk about the main event itself, right? Like I mentioned, Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle. Fred, I'll give you the floor first, brother. What did you think of the entire match, soup to nuts here?
Look, I know it's going to get heated in a little bit, but I'm going to start off by I'm going to be honest. I mean, I thought the match was really good. I thought all the participants in the match did a great job. I mean, Jericho is one of my favorites, so I'm not going to deny that. I always loved the Revival, so now they're known as FTR. Shawn Spears, Ty Dillinger, I was a fan of his in WWE. Sammy Guevara, I haven't really seen because I don't really watch AEW. I mean, I know who he is and things about him. I've seen interviews with him, but never really seen his work. And I have to say, I was very impressed with him in that match. And that seems to be some of the feedback, too, is that he really had a shining moment there. MJF, another one, big fan of his, was happy to see his, moment at the end, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But all the participants, and then Santana and Ortiz, never really never really saw much of their work either, but I'm familiar with them. Love the face paint that they came out in, thought that was a cool look. Love the Inner Circle coming out in the, I guess it was like a prison suit of some sort.
They each had the prison near their hometown on the back, which I thought was just fucking
okay, so
awful.
that's where I because I don't follow it really, that was a disconnect of like why they had those particular prisons on the back of their jumpsuits. So that's cool, something different, so anyway, but to the match, I thought the match was really good. A lot of great bumps. I thought the blood was a little gratuitous. I mean, being that it was called Blood and Guts, they had to give blood. Obviously, if you call something Blood and Guts and then you don't come through with that, it's kind of a letdown, right? But I think in 2021, it was just a little too much. If it was 1987, sure. Hell, if it was 2007, okay. But it just, in today's day and age, it just doesn't feel like it fits. It feels like a round peg in a square hole. And, when WWE first banned the blood back in, I think it was '08, I was like, oh, come on. And it took me a couple of years to, like, get over that, right? I was like, why can't we? And now it's to the point where, like, it's weird seeing it, and it's almost uncomfortable seeing it, and it seems so, like, over the top and not cool, like cheesy almost. Real blood, not that it wasn't real blood, but, like, getting cut open the hard way, stuff like that. Like Lesnar does it a lot in his matches. I like that. Then it seems real. But when we're doing blade jobs, I don't think blade jobs in 2021 are necessary and really are a good look. But regardless, little color, can go a long way. A little color. We had a lot of color, but I digress. But overall, I'm going to stick with the positives. Thought the match was really good. The end, well, it was the end for me ever watching AEW again. But no, I won't say that. But yeah, just a little not the best as far as the finish, the camera angles, the special effects, if you want to call that, on the outside where Jericho landed. Listen, I know that WWE has their falls have cushion. Maybe not 20 years ago, but they do now. And you can sometimes see that, if there's padding underneath the announce table, or, when they land through a box and it caves. You can obviously tell. I mean, they're not just going to have them land on solid concrete or metal. They'll die. So I get it. I'm not mad that they made it safe. But the way that those the steel plates looked, like, it looked so fake. That's my problem. It's not that they were taking precautions, of course, and they should. It was the way it looked. They would have been better off not making it pretend like it was that he fell through steel. They should have made it like, it was just like WWE builds, like a box with plywood, and then all shit underneath, padding or whatever underneath. I just didn't think the fall looked good, especially, I mean, it was high, but it wasn't as high as, a Hell in a Cell or something like that. I mean, it was basically the height of a steel cage, which is, high, but nothing to make as big of a deal as they made. Now, I like the concept of the finish where who was MJF had Jericho, and I forget who surrendered. Was it Guevara?
Sammy Guevara.
It was. I like the idea of that's how, because you had to win. It was no pinfall. It was either submission or surrendering. So I liked how they did that. I liked the concept, but it just felt like the way they did it, it fell flat. It happened like all of a sudden it was over. Like, and there was no, which you do run a risk when you do have a stipulation that's like, even an I Quit match can be, which is basically the same idea, can be anticlimactic. So that's what I thought it was. I thought it was anticlimactic. I mean, Jericho taking the bump after helped, besides the fact that the bump didn't come off looking that spectacular. So I'm not going to shit on it completely. But it just, I don't think it was well executed, and it had all the being to be executed really well. The concept was great. The idea of the finish I loved, and the idea of Jericho taking that bump I loved. It's just that I don't think neither one, the finish or the bump, were well done, and that cost. I won't say it cost them the match. The match is still great, but in the end, that's all I remember. Just like at Revolution, Omega and Moxley had a great match, but all you remember is a terrible. I mean, this wasn't as bad as that, but the explosion. So all in all, good match, but the finish for me just ruined it.
All right, Nick, what do you think of all those thoughts
after my 10-minute diatribe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything Fred said was basically accurate. I mean, and I'll work backwards. I mean, I text you, Miguel, immediately after the finish of the match, and my first initial reaction was, They should just stop doing falls off the top, because no matter what you do, production value, camera angles, whatever it is, the end result is them laying on a bed. I mean, that's what it looks like every single time. Whether it's Shane McMahon jumping off, and yeah, the camera angle is panned back. WWE does a good job, but you know the crash pad is there. Whether it's The Miz and Shane McMahon from the WrestleMania in, I believe, Jersey with the suplex to end it. Yeah, the camera angle again was panned back, but in the end, they're laying on a bed. It's kind of like, I don't need to see who's putting presents under the Christmas tree to know it's not Santa Claus and to know it's my parents. Like, just because I don't see it doesn't mean I don't know what it truly really is. And it's, to me, this exact same thing. Like, I know they're falling on a crash pad. Like, the days of Mick Foley falling off the cell are over. I don't think you're ever going to see that again because everything's too high. I don't think it ruined the match, but I understand the point of the lasting impression being, it's really bad for a couple different reasons. The first reason is because Excalibur should have never called it concrete, because at no point did it ever look like concrete. And in no world ever will concrete concave like that. I don't give a fuck how far they're falling off of. Concrete's never going in.
Yeah.
So don't call it concrete. And then you get to a point where it's like, I know you mentioned that he was high, but like they could have just stood on there and held him. Like, we've seen guys jump off of higher onto pools of people. Like, if you're so afraid that Jericho is going to fall, like, just stand under him and catch him, because you easily could have. That to me is the worst part about all of it, is just the fact that we know it was a crash pad. It was a crash pad. You called it concrete, and it was anything but concrete. Or you called it steel. Whatever it was, neither's bending. Yeah. The other part to it is, I don't know if you watched it a second time. I watched it this morning a second time. But, like, the announcers no-sold the shit out of it. Like, remember they use it all the time, like JR's historic call on when Mick Foley, fell off the cell. Good God Almighty! Good God Almighty!
Iconic.
They killed him. Listen to him. Go back and listen to this. He's like, oh, my God. Like, and then it's nothing. Like, I know he's not the exact same. My JR messing with my throat. I know it's not the same JR that we had, and we could talk day and night about how JR is just not the same JR. And I don't want to kill JR. He's just not the same. He's doing the best he can. I know that for a fact. But even though it's a crash pad, listen to the way Michael Cole sells Miz and Shane. Listen to the way Michael Cole sells Shane McMahon jumping off the cell. Like, both of them were crash pads, but they sold the shit out of it. And I think production, yes. Selling, yes. WWE has the edge on both. And I think that's what ruined it. But also Jericho, like, they need to do a better job of the camera angles. Like, they show Jericho close up, his eyes are open. And then it's almost like Jericho looks at the camera, realizes the camera's on him, and then closes his eyes again. He's like, like, what the fuck is that? And then he's also, you notice at the end of the match, he's like talking to him, like MJF. But Jericho, I was just listening, and the only reason I know this is because I was listening to just shoot interviews, and I listened to Seth Rollins do his shoot interview with Jericho about Bret Hart when Bret Hart called Seth Rollins dangerous after hurting Sting. And Jericho was like, yeah, Bret Hart once said to me, like, I can recite the Gettysburg Address during my match because I talk so much. It's like, you do talk too much. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily talking too much, or like the camera angle needs to know not to be close up on Jericho at that moment. And I think that they have a lot to learn from that. I'm not going to get into the exact match because everything else Fred said is spot on. Like, it was gory. It was crazy. I'm not against the blood so much because I think it's realistic that a match called Blood and Guts inside a cell should have a lot of blood. And I think those, Fred included, I would say, that don't think blood is appropriate in 2021 are just of the mentality that WWE has made us believe. Like, blood shouldn't be in 2021. But why? Like, blood's in everything else. It's in pro boxing. It's in pro UFC. It's in movies. It's in everything. So why shouldn't blood be realistic? It was like the day I found out wrestling wasn't real was when Hulk Hogan was in the turnbuckle punching somebody in the face 10 times. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. My brother was like, do you think it's real? Like, do you think you can get punched in the face 10 times and not have a mark. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess not.
Yeah.
And that was the day I realized that wrestling wasn't real. It's like the same thing. Like the match is blood and guts. They're in a cell. They're stabbing each other with forks. They're going to bleed. To me, it goes back to and even I'll say one more thing. They botched a bunch of moves. Hold on one sec.
I did like the fork spot. I forgot to mention that. I did.
They botched a bunch of moves, but even that to me is okay because it's like we watch professional sports and Tom Brady sometimes throws an interception. A ball sometimes goes through an infielder's legs. Like nobody's perfect 24/7. I think it looks more fake when they don't fuck up all the time because like they're going to fuck up. It's real. Like real. Like you want it to feel real. So I'm okay with them botching moves from time to time. We saw Sammy botch the move where he went from like rope to rope and tried to hit Wilder and he missed. And we saw the botch with the big guy, forgive me, I don't know their names so well, but the big guy kind of picked up Jack Hager and kind of dropped him. Right? Yeah. And then, kind of fell. But I mean, I got to agree with everything Fred said in his opinions of the match. To me, I don't want to see, people getting thrown off the cage. But my issues that I take are with Miguel. So my issues are with Miguel getting his rocks off on the unsuccessful things that AEW does. And we had Eric Bischoff on the show, friend of the show, I think at this point we could call him. And he said AEW is going to make mistakes, but we hope that they learn from it. Like WWE's been around for a million years. Like they've had production issues. We're not far removed from Vader and Goldust fighting with the rubber hammer. Like they've done things that don't look good and don't make sense. Like they've had a long time to be the production value that they are today. I think personally, and I'm going to turn it to Miguel because I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say after this comment. Miguel's opinions of AEW are exaggerated off of these AEW fanboys that Miguel gets so personally offended by when they rip the WWE product that he gets his rocks off on AEW's mistakes. And to me, I say to Miguel, why do you care what people say about WWE? It doesn't stop you from watching them. You get such joy off of AEW making mistakes because these internet fucking dweebs that you don't even know, like, talk shit about WWE, and you get so offended by it that you root for them to fail. Like, you get so giddy when they fail. And it makes no sense to me. Like, wrestling is at its best when there's two companies duking it out. And I'm not saying duking it out in terms of like ratings. Like WWE will always trump AEW. It's just not on the same planet. But when you can go to different situations, when you can jump ship, and we'll get into Daniel Bryan a little bit later, but when you have that option, it creates the necessity to be better because there's always another option. But to Miguel, I got to throw it to you. And sorry, I think I beat you, Fred, in terms of time. But Miguel, I'm going to turn it over to you because you are such a baby when it comes to AEW fanboys. Why are you such a baby?
I just hate I hate the hypocrisy. It is absolutely ungodly. And I've tweeted this before. Those of you that follow us on Twitter, you'll see my MM every time I tweet. AEW fanboyism is absolutely unreal. Now, let me take it back a second. I loved the match last night. I thought it was a great match. I agree with what both of you said on certain points. The finish was the shits, without a doubt. I don't like the whole blade job. I agree with you, Nick. Yeah, there had to be blood. But in my opinion, did every single one of them have to bleed? I'd say probably not.
But everyone didn't bleed.
No, they all did. I think
they didn't all bleed.
8 out of 10 of them did. It was a lot. Did
you guys notice? I'll let you talk because I talked for a while. Did you notice like Jake Hager before the match started? It looked like he like razor bladed like the side of his head.
That's what I thought it was. I think it was supposed to be like war paint because at first I'm like, is he fucking bleeding on the side of his head?
It was absolutely blood. Like it might have been like war paint.
I think he was doing like war paint though. That's what I think it was. You know, like Native American.
Yeah, I think it was blood. The blade jobs and one of the things about production, there was clearly a few close-ups. I think Jericho like took the blade out of his pocket at one point or out of his wristband.
I saw the.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I saw
those
that.
are things the camera guys have.
Yeah, they'll get better at that.
This is shit that they gotta get better. They gotta tighten their shit up. They really do. I mean, I know they're a new company, but
I'm not gonna reiterate the same things you guys said. I agree with you. The production is not even close. I like AEW. I watch it. Unlike Fred, not to throw Fred under the bus, he's very vocal that Fred doesn't watch. I do.
No, I don't.
I want AEW to do well, but it just boils my blood, and I don't know why. Even I can't even answer your question, Nick. But it boils my blood, and I think Fred's on my page here too. The fanboyism in AEW is absurd, because had WWE thrown that up last night, that exact same scenario, the AEW fanboys would have called it the shits. They would have said it was terrible. They would have said it was Mickey Mouse. But because AEW did it, it was, yeah, that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Or today, the ratings came out, right? 1.09 million. Great number for AEW. Number one rated cable show in America last night for Wednesday night. They're calling it the greatest thing ever. AEW's done better numbers than that. If WWE did a 1.09, WWE's Raw is going to shit. SmackDown's going to the dumps, right? It's just the hypocrisy.
I got to be honest. It screams of like you're the big brother, and like the little brother is picking on you, and you're going to mom to tattle on the little brother. Like, just fucking man up, Miguel. Who cares? Like, who cares what a bunch of, as well as I do, that there are certain people in the world, and you call them AEW fanboys, who it doesn't matter what WWE does, they're going to find a way to shit on it. They're just going to shit on it. It doesn't matter. So if they already have a preconceived notion going in, and they're going to shit on it no matter what, then who cares what the fuck they think? Like, who cares? Because it doesn't matter what their opinion is. It's like our old show. It doesn't matter what they think. Like, who cares? They're always going to be negative, so fuck them. It's like CM Punk on Colt Cabana's podcast. Twitter's like the open window in your kitchen. If you don't like somebody screaming in your kitchen, shut the fucking window. Like, who cares what they have to say? Don't get so offended about it. It's not like when me, the Eagles fan, shits all over the Giants and says, oh my God, Danny Dimes with another fucking sack fumble. Your offensive line's trash. And you get offended by it. I get that. But, like, who cares what a bunch of fucking internet nerds who are probably stuck in their parents' basement have to say about fucking AEW or WWE or whatever the case may be. Like, let it go. I'm not going to sing Let It Go. We're not going to turn this into a Frozen song because I've already done one. But let it go. Just let it go. It does not matter what these fucking people think. You get so upset about it.
I think where it really peaked, my blood started to boil was right after WrestleMania. I had someone that I know text me and said, hey, he saw my Instagram. He saw a picture of me and Fred and Jerry there and Art. He said, how was WrestleMania? I said, oh, so much fun, man. How did it come off on TV? This is before I got a chance to go home and watch it. Because I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch. I said, what do you mean you didn't watch? You didn't watch WrestleMania? And he's like, no, man, I'm AEW all the way only. And I didn't, I was just like, okay, I got you. But what I really wanted to say, and Fred, you're going to agree with me on this.
Yeah.
There is no AEW without WWE. There's no AEW without WrestleMania. So what the hell kind of fan? That's like saying I'm a fan of the CFL or the XFL and I didn't watch the Super Bowl. You know what? I'm Team XFL. Fuck the Super Bowl. Didn't watch it this year. Chose not to participate. That was the day where I said to myself, man, the AEW fanboyism is ungodly. And that's my word now. It's ungodly. I've taken that term.
It's almost like the ECW fans back in the day, but just worse. And especially
I don't think they were like that. I don't think ECW fans did not watch. Maybe so. I mean, we were younger, obviously, when ECW's around.
Right. But like they have too much of a voice now is the problem. Everybody's got a fucking voice, and it's annoying that everybody has a voice.
But that's the most 2021 thing you could possibly say. There's so many different avenues to have a voice now.
Yeah.
When ECW was a thing, there was no voice. Like, there was no Twitter, There was no Facebook. You dialed into America Online to see South Park characters dressed like wrestlers.
Right.
Like that's what you did.
Can you
Or went
imagine
into
what
a
they would have
group
been like
chat
back
to,
then?
to try to get a fantasy, what would have been a fantasy wrestling league where you cut promos for the wrestlers. Like that's what it was when ECW was a thing. Like there's too many avenues for a voice. If you don't like the voices, just close them out.
There's a reason AEW fans are the way they are, and the reasons are A, it started from the ground up, so they feel like they're part of it because they were there from the beginning. So it's almost like like they're part of owners of it almost.
I agree.
That's one. And two is just because it's not WWE, they feel like, oh yeah, we're cool. We watch AEW. It's not WWE. Yeah, we don't watch WWE. We're the cool kids. We're watching AEW. Yeah, we're cool. And that's because it's not WWE, it's automatically better, right? So I think those two things combined make it, just because it's AEW, they feel it's good. And just because it's WWE, it's not good.
I'm gonna get off my soapbox after this comment. Here's one more thing. Last week, I think it was a week or two ago, Kenny Omega won the Impact World Championship from Rich Swann, right? On Impact, whatever that pay-per-view was. First and foremost, AEW fans now are all about Impact because of the working relationship between the two. Did these same people give a shit about Impact before AEW came in? Probably not.
Well,
but here's
people still don't. They have like 100,000 people that watch the show.
No, but it's probably. I think they said it was the most bought pay-per-view in like 10 years for Impact, right? Here's the one thing I noticed, because I did get to see some of that match. I think I checked it out online. I don't know. Somebody found a legal stream. The next day, people were going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They were going nuts for this Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann. It took place in a building with nobody there, right? Just like how the WWE Performance Center shows happened in the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
Nobody in the crowd. No Thunderdome set up. No AEW fans set up with fans and obviously the wrestlers pretending they're fans at ringside. None of that. Had that same damn match happened under the WWE umbrella, I can't watch this wrestling with no fans there. That pumped in, sound. There's nobody to look at, blah, blah, blah. But because it was AEW/Impact, right, we'll call them one. Basically, because it was anti-WWE, it was the greatest match of 2021. Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega, the match of the year.
But the greatest match in wrestling history between Edge and Orton, and I'm not saying it was the greatest match in wrestling history. That's what it was called, the greatest match in wrestling history. Edge and Orton took place at the Performance Center, and it was a great match. And I don't remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember people shitting on it. I remember some people talking about the fact that Edge got hurt in the match and ended up being the match that he missed time because of. But nobody shit on that match. It was a good match. Here's the question I have for you, Miguel, because it just boggles my mind. Because I don't know how old you guys are, like, exact number. But I'm guessing in 1996 and 1997, when the NWO first formed and you had Stone Cold Steve Austin running wild, and the Attitude Era was just on the heels of being something really, really cool. And in my opinion, the greatest era of professional wrestling. And I'm telling you right now, people that are listening to this podcast right now, nodding their heads, saying the greatest era in professional wrestling was 96, 97, and 98, and 99. The point I'm trying to make is that there was WCW and there was WWE. And I was an 100% loyalist to WWE. I never flipped the channel from WWE Raw or WWF Raw to Monday Nitro. I only watched WWE. And I had a friend who you guys know on Sharp Bets and Fantasy Sets, Tim, who was WCW primarily and sometimes WWE, but he was WCW primarily. And I never shit on him or anything about watching. I just said, I watch Raw. Like, I want to help WWE. I want to help WWF with the ratings war. So I'm never flipping to WCW. Like, but I never got offended by the fact that, like, people liked WCW. Like, I didn't care. Like, Miguel, if you lose your house and your job and Lindsay leaves you, is Triple H going to call you on the phone and say, oh, hey, kid, no problem. Here's $100,000. Here's $1 million to get yourself back on the feet. Like, to steal a quote from a great movie, The Bronx Tale, if your dad loses his job tomorrow, is Mickey Mantle going to come pay your rent? No. So who gives a fuck about Mickey Mantle? It's the same thing. Like, stop getting so personally offended by when people rip WWE. Because if you fall in the tanks and in the gutter, WWE doesn't give a fuck about you. Like, they don't care about you. It doesn't matter that you've been to 25 WrestleManias. Like, nothing matters. So stop getting so offended by it. That's what drives me nuts. That's what makes me want to make fun of you all the time. And now I rip you in those group chats because who the fuck cares? Who cares?
I usually don't care, but the AEW fanboyism has become ungodly, and that is going to be my term. Scott, if you're checking out our show, I know you're producing it right now, make us a shirt that says AEW fanboyism is ungodly. We're going to sell that bitch on TruExactRadio.com. Guys, let's move on because we do have a few other topics that I want to talk about. All in all, though, Blood and Guts was an awesome match. I'm not gonna shit on it.
Just real fast before we move on. Thumbs up, thumbs down on head chair shots.
Oh no, yeah, that's another thing. I'm not a fan of that anymore, honestly. It doesn't even look good. I know those chairs were gimmicked, but it doesn't even look good in my opinion.
It was surprising that they did it. I won't go further into it because I know we do have a lot of topics and we're running long on this one. So, but yeah, I was shocked that they were hitting each other in the head with chairs.
Yeah, it's almost like disturbing after everything we've learned about concussions and stuff. And again, I know they shaved the chairs; they're gimmick chairs, but it's not right in 2021. That's just my opinion. But anyway, we're going to move on and talk about the other probably biggest news of the week, and that's that. And Fred and I, of course, talked about this last week. Daniel Bryan did lose his match against Roman Reigns as expected, and in the storyline is now banished from SmackDown. The interesting, though, portion is the next day or 2 days after, what's his name? Ryan Ross Sapp, whatever the hell his name is.
Sean Ross Sapp.
Sean Ross.
Asshole.
Sapp, another simp. Sean Ross Sapp actually put out there that Daniel Bryan's contract expired in real life. So, we were kind of doing some speculation. I did it with my friends, too, in our group chat about where Daniel Bryan kind of ends up. Nick, I'll ask you first on this. Where do you think he goes from here?
He's going to stay in WWE. He's not going to leave. I think with his wife being, fixated with the company, possibly making another run herself, I can't see him going to another company at this point. Do I think that at some point when his WWE contract, I know you just said his contract is expired, but I think for right now, he's going to stay with WWE. I just don't realistically see him leaving. Do I think that there might be a time sometime down the line where he fights Kenny Omega? I could see him fighting Kenny Omega. He seems to be very high on him. But what would be the incentive for him at this age to go to AEW? And I know I'm going to sound like I'm ripping AEW, but you just came out in quotes and said you weren't amped to fight Roman Reigns and Edge in the main event of WrestleMania. Mind you, it's his second main event in WrestleMania history, 30 in this one. So it's the main event of the first WrestleMania ever since COVID with fans. It's also Edge's first match with fans, not counting the Royal Rumble. You got Roman Reigns, who's the hottest heel, and you're not amped for that match. What's going to make you amped in AEW that wouldn't make you amped in that match? I think Daniel Bryan's at a point right now where he might work behind the scenes of WWE and work in a part-time role as a wrestler. I don't think he necessarily wants to be a wrestler anymore full-time, but I don't think he's going to go to AEW. I think there's people that might think that. I don't know what you guys think. I turn to you and listen to your thoughts, but he's not going to AEW. I'd be shocked at that. I would be really shocked at that. I think he's going to stay in WWE, possibly in a part-time role, but he's not going anywhere.
You think there's a chance he goes to NXT and becomes the face of NXT for a bit?
I think it's possible he would have more fun in NXT. I don't know Daniel Bryan. I've met him one time. He was super cool, but I don't know Daniel Bryan personally, but just feeling like what I know about him, just based on interviews that he's done and stuff, I don't think the limelight is something that he necessarily needs. I don't think he would ever leave in a CM Punk situation. I truly don't think he cares. I think he just enjoys wrestling, in my opinion. So I think anywhere where he's just wrestling is fine by him. So I think that NXT building the characters there and everything, maybe even helping Shawn Michaels, who trained him, could be something. But I think he's WWE for life.
Fred, do you think it makes more sense for him to go to Raw to help the ratings out there because we know Raw's been in the slumps lately, or should he go to NXT? And because to Nick's point, he probably would have more fun in NXT.
Raw certainly can use him. Raw certainly needs him. But if it were up to me, I would love to see him have a run in NXT. I'm not even saying long term. Go there for a year. Just we mentioned it. I think me and you on a text. I mean, God, him and Ciampa, him and Gargano, him and Cross. I mean, Cole O'Reilly. I mean, you can go on and on all day. We could do a whole podcast on the possibilities of Daniel Bryan in NXT. If it were up to me, that's where I'd like to see him go, just for a short run. I'd like to see all those matches get knocked off the checklist. I'm not so confident that his contract truly is expired.
Okay.
A, it's the internet.
Yeah, we don't. That's true. We don't know.
B, it's Sean Ross Sapp. And C, Daniel Bryan's been working on the creative team for over a year. So you mean to tell me he's just all of a sudden done? So he's not on the creative team all of a sudden. 1 week now he's not. Could it? I mean, listen, anything's possible. Nothing's impossible. But I think this may be a case of working the internet. I don't think he's going to wrestle full time. I don't know if he knows how often he's going to wrestle, what his part-time, if he's part-time, what that even looks like. He may not know, but I don't really believe 100% that he has no contract in WWE. I just find that very hard to believe. Unless he was adamant that he wasn't re-signing, I don't see WWE letting him have a no non-compete clause. Like, I don't see it. So I think it's a case of working the internet. He is signed. He will come back. And the fact that they said banished from SmackDown, I think gives you all the clues you need to know that they left doors open for Raw or NXT. If they said banished from WWE, I mean, again, is wrestling. They've done that before too, and they could work around it. But the fact that they even said banished from SmackDown leaves a lot open. So I think we will see Daniel Bryan back.
Yeah.
When, I don't know. Where, I don't know. But I don't think it'll be that long. And if it's NXT, I think that would be an awesome, awesome spot.
Nick, do you think because you've been very vocal that you don't watch NXT because you like to see the guys if and when they go to Raw or SmackDown. If someone like Daniel Bryan were to go to NXT, would that get you to watch it more? Someone like you who's really not really a fan of NXT currently?
I don't watch NXT for the single reason that there is just entirely too much professional wrestling on TV, and I just don't have time for everything. That is truly the only reason I don't watch NXT. I also don't watch NXT because if you're a fan of the show and you know myself, you know that I like to be surprised by the characters when they come up to wrestling, to WWE or to Raw or to SmackDown. Sorry. So I like to be surprised by their gimmicks when they come up and they're officially on the main stage. I like to know really nothing about them. But no, I don't think it doesn't matter who. Now, if you guys text me and say, "Oh my God, you got to watch the Daniel Bryan Karrion Kross match," I'll watch that. I watch matches when you guys say certain matches are really, really good. I will go back and watch those matches. But to watch the product every single week, we got Raw, we got fucking SmackDown, we got AEW, we have NXT. And let's face it, when Vince McMahon finally, passes away, which would be horrible. But when Vince McMahon finally passes and Triple H takes over, Raw and SmackDown are just going to be like a better version of NXT anyway, because really the best parts about NXT are what Triple H puts into it, because he's a master when it comes to that kind of stuff. I can't wait I know it's like morbid to say I can't wait for when Vince dies, but I can't wait for Triple H to take over WWE as a whole, because the product is going to be so good. And if you don't think they're going to have a partnership with AEW and all of those other, I just have a feeling that Triple H is chomping at the bit to have like the old territory days where like they would all like share each other's people, and like wrestling will be so great when they're able to do all of those things.
WWE is building a territory system within the company,
right? Like you could see that they're
you know, NXT UK is the start of it, but they are going to be doing eventually an NXT in India, Latin America, and eventually there's going to be NXTs all around the world. Not, you know, it could be 20 years from now, but over time, and eventually, really, it'll become a territorial system again, but all under the WWE umbrella. So
I don't want to get Miguel off too much in excitement by putting Triple H over, but wrestling will be a better world when Triple H.
You know, the funny thing about NXT, it's actually, you know, I don't know how much really will change, Nick, and I'll tell you why. It's an interesting thought. Triple H did an interview right around WrestleMania time. I actually just watched it the other night. It's a Token CEO. It's a Barstool Sports podcast, and he was talking about NXT. They was plugging WrestleMania, and he was plugging Stand and Deliver at the time, and they were basically talking about the differences. And he says, you know, Raw and SmackDown is like pop music, and it's for the masses. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody on those shows. You know, it's more of like variety. You know, it's mainstream. Yeah. And NXT is instead of pop, it's like the underground, like metal or underground hip hop. Like it's a little darker. So I don't think it's going to change to completely where it's like Raw and SmackDown are just like a bigger version of NXT. I do think there will be things taken from NXT and Triple H's viewpoints that we will see implemented on a Raw and SmackDown. But I think NXT is still going to have its own distinct underground feel, a little edgier, a little darker, as it should be. I think Raw and SmackDown should be different, because if they're not different and you're not, you know, targeting the masses as opposed to the niche wrestling fan, you know, then what are you doing? You know, that's what makes NXT special, and vice versa. That's what makes Raw and SmackDown special, is that it's a, you know, more pop, you know, culture phenomenon type thing, whereas NXT is the underground, upstart, cool kind of, you know, thing. So, but I do think, to your point, Triple H will make some big changes. I think scripted promos will be one of them, which apparently they've been lightening up on, from what I understand. And the promos have been better than they had been in the past. I will say that as well. I don't know if a lot of that has to do with the, you know, no crowds. But yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens.
I think for sure that when Triple H and company eventually do take over, they will strike a deal. Maybe not. I don't know with AEW, but maybe. I mean, I could see it happening. I mean, the fact that Jericho went on Broken Skull Sessions, right, on the WWE Network.
That's so crazy.
I think it's the start of it. I think there's something coming down the pipe.
Well, eventually WWE will buy AEW and it'll be on the network. You know, they'll add weekly AEW Dynamites to the network every Saturday and shit like that. So that'll be fun to see in about 20 years.
Honestly, how hilarious would it be if you just saw one day Triple H or somebody, Shane, go on the Dynamite? I now own AEW.
Well, I will say this. I did think for real a couple of years ago when there was talk of Impact selling, and before Scott D'Amore and Don Callis took over and Anthem bought them and all that. Remember, there were some rumors WWE was going to buy them. I didn't think they were going to buy Impact altogether, because what are they buying, right? But I did think they were going to buy the video library, because so many of their stars, you know, were, you know, God, AJ Styles alone, that you know, it's not the DVD era anymore, but my God, the amount of, you know, three DVD sets that 3-disc DVD sets they could have put out on that, or, you know, network specials now, you know.
But didn't Conrad and Bruce, when they were doing something to wrestle with on the WWE Network, do an episode on TNA?
Yeah, so they've used TNA footage, and they still do to this day. And then WWE will just plug their because Impact has a I think it's called Impact Plus app or something like that. You know, it's almost like the same idea as the network, somewhat. And they'll plug, watch the full match on, so they have done some deals with Impact over the last 5 years or so where they've used some footage. Whether it was an AJ Styles special or Samoa Joe or even the Hardys, I think they've used a couple of things from them. And, there's a lot. Now everybody's been through TNA.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. WWE, and I'm sorry to offend the AEW fanboys that keep Miguel up at night, but if you're an AEW fanboy and you watch your show, it is absolutely 100% impossible for anybody to beat WWE. Like it's just never going to happen. Like WWE will always exist. They've had a head start on every other company. Like the only reason there was a Monday Night War, because WCW, which was kind of like NWA or NWA or whatever, go into WCW. They were around the same time. Like there was no head start. Now WWE has an enormous head start on anybody, whether it be TNA, AEW, anything. So nobody's ever going to catch WWE. It's impossible. And I think WWE just doesn't care. Like, who cares that, like, Billy Gunn shows up working for AEW but gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame with DX? Like, who cares if Bruce and Conrad talk about TNA on a WWE network? Who cares that Jericho comes on and talks about Sammy Guevara on the Broken Skull session on WWE? Like, who cares? They're never going to beat WWE. So why not, like, draw more eyes onto WWE by letting these people come on? To me, that's like what it's all about. Triple H, I think, has a lot to do with it. I know they said they asked Vince, and Vince said, well, I think it's a great idea. So Vince, I think, gets it too, to a point. But I just think that, like, all of these people, like, when they're all working together, like, WWE is going to just be more popular because of the fact that they're doing these kind of things of letting all the cross promotion and all of the things go on. I think it's hilarious also that this is where we're talking about after the subject being Daniel Bryan. Like, we got so far off topic.
Yeah, it's like Eric Bischoff podcast.
I just think it's hilarious that we're talking about this. But yeah, so anyway, Daniel Bryan staying in WWE.
Yeah. Let me try to reel this back in as we go into our last topic here. I want to spend the last couple of minutes here of the show talking about the Macho Man documentary that happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I know all three of us.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I know all three of us said we got a chance to watch the documentary. Obviously, I thought it was great, and I'll get you guys points on it here as well too. But the biggest part that I'm curious about is Conrad, who is obviously a former guest of the show, and
key plug.
A few other people on social media actually called it a hit job. Dave LaGreca did as well too on Busted Open Radio. Pete Rosenberg, who was a part of the documentary and obviously a former guest on the show, was just on 2 weeks ago.
Great closing comments by Pete Rosenberg on that episode. He really took that home.
He actually defended the doc, saying he thought it was really good. Yeah. What did you guys think? Did you guys think it was a hit job?
Yeah.
No.
All right, so we got two different opinions. Fred, yes, or Fred, no. Nick, yes. All right, Nick, go ahead. Elaborate a little bit.
Well, I think that there's a couple different things that go into the opinion of it being a hit job. And start with the documentaries. And they talked about on Twitter, I forget who made the comment. I truly forget who made the comment. I think it might have been Peter Rosenberg. But each episode, although part of the same series, has a different director. Yeah. And the director can take it. Yeah, the director can take it any way they want. And I think you're more inclined to think something is a hit job when the person isn't alive anymore to defend themselves. And I think that that's the part that makes it a hit job. Now, I'm not saying that some of the stuff isn't true about the Macho Man. The stuff with Elizabeth was part of a Dark Side of the Ring episode.
That's well documented.
Yeah, his controlling nature on the women that he was with is well documented. Why I think it was a hit job and why it wasn't fair is Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So don't misconstrue anything I'm saying. But Stone Cold Steve Austin has been a part of multiple domestic violence issues. They were not documented in his documentary, were they? Unless I missed something. Did they talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin's documented domestic violence issues with Deborah McMichael and with other women?
Negative.
So Stone Cold Steve Austin, and again, allegedly, I'm ignorant to the fact of where it went.
Deborah got her ass whooped. No.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, like, beat on women.
I shouldn't.
You shouldn't say that. But Stone Cold Steve Austin legitimately
hell yeah. No, I'm kidding.
possibly beat on women, and like that wasn't documented. But they're going to talk about Macho Man's like controlling nature with Gorgeous George, who I don't know if that stuff is true. You know, Gorgeous George also on that same documentary is talking about being a stripper, being addicted to pain medication and stuff like that. Like, I'm going to take her word for it. Like, I don't necessarily know if I'm taking her word for it. And I want to quote real quick, because you talked about multiple people thinking it's a hit job, and I'm reading Sean Waltman's quotes on the episode. And if you don't mind, let me just read them real quick. This is Sean Waltman on Pro Wrestling for Life. Well, first of all, I really enjoyed Stone Cold Steve Austin one. I really enjoyed the Piper one. I didn't like it, man, talking about Macho Man. They went in hard on Mach. He's not around to defend himself. He's not around to say, hey, that's not true. He's not here, man. And I just didn't like it. I wasn't a fan of it. And I don't understand, and I agree with this. This is me talking. How Bubba the fucking Love Sponge ended up having so much airtime. Like, that dude doesn't need to be on that documentary at all. I was in Tampa back then, and they were hard on Mach over the airwaves in Tampa. It was fucked up, man. And I've even been on the air with some of them and actually said, you're not going to talk shit about Mach while I'm here. They respected that. I love Mach. A lot of the stuff they said, it was obviously stuff everyone's heard before. I don't even want to go into it. I just didn't think it was cool at all. And I'm really highly disappointed in that. That's Sean Waltman, Xbox 6, whatever the case may be. Like, why is Bubba the Love Sponge going on there and saying, tee-hee, me and Hulk Hogan, we like to pick on my... Like, didn't Hulk Hogan fuck your wife on video? Like, who's Bubba the Love Sponge? Like, go away. Nobody cares about you. You're not a wrestler. You're not part of the boys. Neither are we, but we don't act like we are. Like, go away. You don't ever need to be on a podcast. You don't ever need to be on a documentary about Macho Man Randy Savage. The WWE documentary on Macho Man Randy Savage was great. They didn't need to go into the dark stuff because we don't know truly if it's real. And that's the thing that I have a problem with. He's not here to defend himself. We don't know if it's true. I'm not watching it for speculation and gossip, so why bring it up? Like, I'm watching the documentary to learn about his career. That's what I'm there to learn about.
Well, it sounds like we're never gonna have Bubba the Love Sponge on as a guest host on
Fuck that guy.
On Mark's side of the ring. Here's the part that was the real big head scratcher. Why the fuck was Gorgeous George's sister not wanting to show her face on camera? Like, is like Savage part of like an Italian mafia that we don't know about? Like,
that's the other thing too. It's so weird.
Like, why was she refusing to show her face on camera? Was someone coming after her? That's when I thought it started to get weird. I was like, okay, there's some weird ass shit going on here with this documentary. I thought the documentary was awesome. I really did enjoy it. As far as a hit job goes, I mean, I could see it both sides, I guess. Ultimately, I didn't think it really was until I started really seeing things on social media and I started second guessing myself. But you know, Fred, I'll turn it to you because you don't think it was a hit job. Give us a few reasons why you don't think it was.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to use the term hit job, right? Because when we say that, what it sounds like to me is that it was WWE making this to make Macho Man look like that. WWE really has no part in any of these biographies. They basically license their footage and they provide their talent for interviews. Yep. WWE really has no part in it. So when we say it's a hit job, to me it makes it sound like, oh yeah, WWE was trying to make Macho Man look.
I don't think that at all, by the way. Okay. This is not the rise and fall of the Ultimate Warrior.
So I just want to clear that air because I don't want it to come off that people are making it sound like almost like it is the rise and fall or the destruction, whatever of the DVD was called on it.
Yeah, no, I don't think. And I even said, Fred, if you I know you did. You probably own it. I did. The Macho Man documentary that
Yes.
WWE did. That was wonderful.
Very well done.
They don't go into that
In
stuff.
fact, the interviews with Randy Savage's mother in the beginning, and they have 2014 as the year. Those are from the Macho Man documentary that they did.
Yes.
Which was crazy that because she passed away not that long after that, maybe a year or two the most after that. It was very cool that they had her interviewed for that. But anyway,
yes.
So that's where that archive footage was from. So I don't want to use the term hit job because to me it makes it sound like because of WWE's history with Randy Savage and it's been well documented and there's rumors which they didn't cover, which I didn't think they would, but I wasn't sure.
Stephanie.
Yeah. So so one thing but do I think that the particular directors of this episode were angling the show a certain direction? For sure. That was the direction they were taking the episode in. I don't think it was anything necessarily against Savage. To me, a hit job makes it look like they were intentionally trying to, get one over on Randy, right? And I don't think that was the case. I think they were taking that angle because it was gratuitous and it, got people talking and it, it was controversial and all that stuff sells and gets people talking more than just oh yeah, he was a great wrestler. Oh yeah, he was this. Oh yeah, the flying elbow was awesome. This was that. This, all the sugar-coated stuff. That stuff is going to sell more, right? So I think they took the episode in that direction, but I don't think it was done intentionally to make him look bad. I just think they were just trying to go with that angle.
Real quick, Fred, I have a question for you. So truth be told, I did not watch the last 20 minutes of the Stone Cold Steve Austin one.
Mm-hmm.
So, question. I just know they didn't talk about the domestic violence.
No.
Did they talk about him taking his ball and leaving WWE because he didn't want to put off Brock?
Yeah, they did talk about that. Yeah.
So, to me, it just seems like, and again, every director has their own motives, but like there's dark stuff in every professional wrestler.
Right, yeah.
And the guys that they picked, there is literally dark stuff on every, like, I know they're going to talk.
Why do you think they picked those guys, right?
Yeah, right. Like,
I mean,
Booker
Stone
T,
Cold,
he has
a dark, but I feel like Stone Cold's success and just him being the biggest star in the history of professional wrestling, that kind of outshined any negative things he had later on in his career, with the exception of taking his ball and going home. That's a big part of his story.
I'm glad they talked about it.
But the Deborah thing, and also don't forget, he may have said that's off limits.
But that's where I think it's not people shitting on WWE or attacking WWE with this. It's that like Macho Man's not alive to defend himself. Roddy Piper isn't alive to defend himself.
But don't forget, his estate, or whoever was in, whether it was Lanny or whoever, they had to agree on what was, what was going to be talked about, what was covered and what wasn't.
His brother's in the whole documentary.
Right. So I don't think,
to an extent, I'm not necessarily saying that Poffo knew the genius, Lanny knew anything about like Gorge. It's not so much the Elizabeth stuff. That doesn't bother me because it's documented. It was the Gorgeous George and his sister stuff. That's what.
If you want to say it was a hit, then you got to put the blame entirely, solely, 100% on the directors of that episode.
I do. I don't blame WWE. Yeah. I don't even blame WWE 1%. I blame Gorgeous George and her sister because that's where the hit job was. I don't know if what they're saying is true, and he's not around to defend himself. He was never arrested for that. He was never in trouble for that. And I got to be honest, and maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but like Stone Cold beating women, allegedly, is a hell of a lot worse than Macho Man video recording women. I'm sorry. It is. You put your hands on a woman.
Yeah, no. I mean, listen, hey, I totally agree with that. But again, these directors decided to take the episode in this direction, whereas the directors of the Stone Cold one,
and here's the question about the direction.
They didn't want to take it. They didn't want to make it about that. They could have, but I guess they didn't. They didn't want to.
Why did they spend so much time on after Macho Man and Elizabeth broke up, right, or they got divorced? Like, Wasn't it kind of odd that they spent a lot of time on Elizabeth's track post Macho Man? Like, it had nothing to do with Macho Man.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it was weird that they. I mean, because obviously she's a huge part of his career and his life.
Right, but they almost made it sound like it was a documentary on both of them, right?
Yeah, and that was they. I don't know why they did that. And these directors, they directed Cocaine Cowboys and a couple of other things that were well regarded. So yeah, I have to say, I mean, I enjoyed the episode, but I thought that the Piper and the Austin one were better.
This was definitely the most controversial of the three.
For sure. And again, that could be what they were going for.
And honestly, I'm curious to see where they go with the Booker T one, because it's well documented that he was incarcerated, right?
Right, and they have to.
Well,
That's a huge part of his story.
He talks about it in the preview that he was arrested. So
yeah,
I'm sure
that's a huge part of his story that has to be covered.
True.
It'll
definitely be
Shawn Michaels. You don't think Shawn Michaels' episode is not going to? I mean, a majority of that episode is going to revolve around his drug problems and him
getting beat up, getting jumped by the Marines. They're going to talk about that shit. I just don't like the stuff where it's like, I guess Sean Waltman's right. Like, it's because he's dead and he can't defend.
I get it. I mean, yeah, because even Piper, like, they referenced that he was wild, but they didn't really go into much details about it.
Here's another question I have for you too. It has nothing to do with whether it was a hit job or not, but this kind of take away from you, because I didn't know this. I don't know if you two know this. Did you know that Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man wrote down their entire match?
Yeah.
Yep.
I did not. For whatever reason, I did not know that. And now looking back, I'm like, it was one of the best matches ever. But now I'm like, it's kind of taken down a notch or two now that I found that out. Because I feel like, and I honestly, Bully said it today.
Savage did that with a lot of his matches.
Yeah, like that's like what?
Maybe not writing them down.
Macho Man was very, very meticulous.
DDP
and well
was
known
like that too.
for being very, very like a perfectionist in a way.
Yeah.
Almost.
I get it, but I don't know. To me, it takes away from the match a little bit. It's not now. I don't hold it as high a regard.
Well, Hogan and Andre, one of the greatest, for the sport matches of all time at WrestleMania 3 was done the exact same way. If you watch the Andre the Giant documentary, Hulk Hogan talks about it. He writes it all down, then gives it to Vince, and he doesn't know if Andre's going to do it. And then, not to spoil the Andre documentary, but Andre calls the entire thing that Hulk Hogan wrote down. So.
I did pop for Hogan saying they didn't want to try and, steal the thunder from me and Andre. They just, Ricky Steamboat. We were trying to steal.
I did laugh at that. That made me laugh. It was almost like the Rick James thing where he's like, I'm not trying to, fuck up his couch. Yeah, I tried to fuck up his couch.
The other thing too, and I also heard this somewhere else, is I don't think Hogan knew that Bubba the Love Sponge was going to be on this documentary.
Oh, I want to get back, Nick. I agree with you. I think Bischoff talked about it too.
I can't watch that dude anymore.
I can't see him doing on that show. He did not. Who gives a shit what that fat asshole says? I mean, honestly.
Did you hear?
Just everything about him just drives me nuts. Like, I hope that Scott tags that part, and that's a part of our show that gets snippeted, so that I can.
I mean, he almost ruined Hulk Hogan's life.
Yeah.
Fuck Bubba.
And they were friends.
Fuck him.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Well, guys, we talked about a lot of really good stuff today. So, as always, we appreciate the love. Of course, you can find all of our shows on TrueExactRadio.com. Follow us on social media, TrueExact Radio. We have our own Twitter handle, Mark's Side of the Ring. You can also catch our shows on the True Exact channel page on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you guys get your podcast. Guys, we'll see you back next week. We're getting right in. I believe next week, if I'm not mistaken, what is it? Next week is our prediction show for WrestleMania Backlash. So we'll see you back here, same time, same place. Thanks, boys.
I'm calling it back.
My prediction is Eva Marie signing with WWE is stupid.
Boo.
Until next week.